All right, so you just got Angel's Fall first. You did the tutorials, you did the space tutorials, you figured out how all the ships work. They had some good guides at the beginning. You got some confidence, feeling on top of the world, hopping into multiplayer, and suddenly you are getting absolutely destroyed. Yeah, it's a pretty common situation right now, just given that there's a lot of new players. So I figured it would be really helpful to get a video out there, maybe giving some new players kind of a sense of direction when they're hopping in these space battles, because space and ground, it's very different, and I would say space definitely has the higher learning curve. But actually, at the end of the day, once you get a lot of the basics of just where you should be going, what's going to be a helpful thing for the team to do, um, it really gets simple from there. And then it just becomes a matter of, you know, are you going to be pitted against pretty decent fighter pilots, which there's a few counters for, which we can talk a little bit about in this video. But overall, the key here is just going to be how do you get yourself oriented, hopping into a match. Maybe the match is in progress, maybe it's just starting. We're just running a little AI match here to show you that and get some bearings. So the first thing is going to be kind of showing you guys a little bit of how the map system will help you out. It's a little confusing, obviously, with the UI being what it is. I have found my way kind of to work around it. I know some people kind of mess with them a little bit, so I think maybe this will help a little bit for those people, and give some good tips, because there is a lot of info you can get just from this screen. So I'm in deploy mode. Or actually, sorry, I'm in command mode. If I switch to deploy mode, this means I will have the ability to spawn. If you were stuck in command mode, you will not. That's just a small thing. I think it might be in the tutorial, but just want to repoint that out because I think some players get really stuck figuring out why they can't hit spawns. Once we're in either command or deploy, we can still look at the map in both modes. So I'm just going to use this to kind of take a look, see what's going on, figure out what I want to do. So the key here, you can use this legend to really get a sense of what's going on. Once I zoom out with mouse wheel, I'm looking at the full map now. I'm seeing all my teammates and what ships they're in, and I'm seeing where our dropship is. So dropship, always great to try and locate that as soon as you can. It's always going to need as much support as possible to try and get to a boarding situation, which it is trying to do right now. Luckily, it does have a fighter trying to help him. It looks like the dropship was successful. It looks like the way it shot off, and the way that we had an announcement there that the frigate was boarded. So if I click on the frigate, as I just did, we now see that there is this spawn point, but I can't select it because I'm in command mode. So if I switch to deploy mode, you'll see the ping icon show up to be able to deploy there. And this is actually kind of the most important thing, because above all priorities, when you can get boarders on ships, that is always, always, always going to be the best thing to do for your team, no matter what. Sure, if there's maybe too many people on a boarding party and you don't really need all of them there, if it's already kind of a ship that's going to go down, maybe you could be doing other stuff. But I think if you're a new player, it never hurts to be on a boarding party to really be doing the most for your team. As you can see, the core lockouts are the key with a boarding party. Luckily, it does point them out automatically when you have an AI commander. It might get a little wonky if you have player commanders that are not pointing these things out, but I believe once you've boarded, they might automatically assign these objectives anyways. So, doing our thing here, destroying the core lockouts. There's usually 2 of these on a frigate that unlock the main core, which is the key to blocking the enemy respawns on this vessel. So, I know some of this was in the tutorial, but just clarifying, the core is how they respawn, so once you destroy that, they can't respawn. You want to get that done before they destroy your breach point, and try and keep your breach point alive as long as you can, because it looks like we have some AI here messing with it already. So we're trying to defend this. It's still got half health. It looks pretty beat up, but actually, if you look at that health bar, it's pretty good. We're going to get back to the main core. Obviously, the best explosives you can have in this situation are the det packs. I'm using an airburst launcher just because it's what I have, but it's not really the best thing to use in this case. But you can tell it does do damage pretty fast. it also has a nice range if you're ever trying to kind of not necessarily have to jump right in, and it's good for getting quick damage for sure. But yeah, some people try and use a repair tool. Repair tool is fine if you have to. It just doesn't go quite as fast by far. As you can see now, we have the timer popped up. That timer means if the ship you're in has a hangar, look for that pilot space to get to one of their ships, hijack it to eject. And I should point out, the reason that boarding is so important, even in territories where you're thinking, well, it's just an objective kind of secure an area mode, right? Actually, in territories, the score is not really just based on the area objectives, because there are also objectives attached to these frigates and bigger ships that each of your teams spawn in. So if you keep those ships alive as long as you can, you get higher point scores, and you also can use those ships to really block out enemies in certain areas if you want to try and use it as an offensive vehicle too. So keeping those big ships alive is very, very, very important. And definitely what a lot of the win-loss hinges on. So if one team is boarding and the other team is not boarding, it is pretty obvious who's going to win that match very quickly. I see we have a bomber here. As a fighter, or even as a scout, it's really good to take out bombers. You can see these... the one thing I did want to go over with in terms of flying, I'm not going to go into too much detail in terms of how to fly, because beyond the tutorial, I don't have a huge amount of advice. Obviously, with the advanced flying, you know, you've got some pilots that can do this like crazy fly around momentum modes where you're kind of drifting and then taking crazy shots. But what I'm just going to focus on is the two main weapon types as a kind of personal ship is shield damage and hull damage. So this is kind of a hybrid as a scout. It's a little more effective against hulls when the shields are down, but I can still do some damage. Still do damage when their shields are up with it. So I'm gonna also have my missiles, but missiles are really only going to be helpful once their shields are down. So sometimes you just need to unload a machine gun, and that's fine. Also, using your traps, always a good thing if you have a ship that you want to defend in a certain location, especially in territories. If you just want to defend that objective location, if you drop some mines in the area, obviously when an enemy comes in there, you could surprise them with a quick detonate on them with some mines that will home toward them if they come in range of them. So kind of like yeah, they're a little bit homing mines, because once they're in the radius, you'll see the laser as they follow their enemies. Yeah, I think with boarding, the other key point is how to do the dropship system, which obviously you can see we don't have a dropship, I believe, at the moment, because you will not always have a dropship available if you're losing them too fast. So it is very important to keep them alive, because they only get spawned in at certain points. If you are really interested, you can look at a vehicle queue, and it will show, at least for the bigger ships, when they are deployed. Oh, and then you got to notice there that a dropship launched, so that's always good, because when that happens, you just want to make sure we have some players that are deploying in fighters to escort it. Now, if you are boarding a dropship and you're not going to be on one of the two turrets inside it, beyond having 3 people inside it, there's nothing really helpful to do there. So it's always better to be in a fighter. Even than being one of the gunners, it is kind of better to be in a fighter or a scout, where you can counter any of the fighters that are going to try and ambush the dropships, because the dropship's very slow, not really good against fighters. So that's kind of the whole balancing for dropships, is a team that's aware of them can definitely target them quickly. And yes, I know I'm talking a lot about dropships and a lot about boarding, but it really is the most important thing to be focusing on in any space match during phases where that's available. And in territories, that's all the time. So dropships really are really key, and they are the only way you can board enemy ships. So if you don't have a drop pod on an enemy ship, you can't just fly your ship into theirs. You do need to have the drop pods for that reason. So besides that, Wanted to also talk about the types of ships and what is kind of your go-to choices in terms of kind of picking what ship is most helpful at any given time. Now, if you're someone who's good with the whole flying stuff and you notice you're in a match where you're staying toe-to-toe with other pilots, you know, it's not a bad idea to try and help out there, especially escorting ships and stuff. But if you are noticing that is not your strong suit, probably helpful to focus on boarding or even steering and repairing your own capital ships if no one's inside helping repair, because you will repair the inside of your ships way faster than even these big battleships can do damage on the outside. Might be too late for me to save this guy, but oh yeah, that's not gonna be good. So the last kind of key thing we're seeing here is a little bit of the maneuvering of the larger ships in these space battles is also the very, very important part of how you can win or lose. So the sides of ships take normal damage, the front of ships take 50% less damage, and the back of ships take 50% more. Engines, obviously, if you target engines, they lose the ability to steer for a couple of seconds. They do regen health on stuff, but if you have a team of bombers that are just holding on them, they're not going to be moving. So the key with the bigger ships, obviously, have defenses for against the bombers. Since they're pretty slow, they can get taken out. But also it's the positioning and how their main weapon on these bigger ships is these ion cannons we're seeing here. Those will be doing definitely the most large ship damage of any vehicle in the game, much more than the torpedoes even. So the key with the larger ships is utilizing that effectively. And it's definitely hard to aim because you're not getting to use the same turret maneuverability you have where you can quickly adjust, because it's all based on your ship's bow and where it's pointing. But yeah, so that's kind of the keys with understanding a little bit of the difference between the winners and the losers in space battles, especially in territories. In terms of incursion, I will say it's definitely a more complicated mode because the objectives are always going to be different depending on the map you've chosen. So it's kind of fun because it's more of a campaign style. It gets a little more of a scenario involved where each map can kind of have its own storyline and its own unique challenges for the attackers and defenders to adjust to, like what you have resources available to do. But that also makes it a little tougher because you don't know going into it necessarily, especially the first time playing these maps, what you can all use in terms of battleships, since sometimes those incursion maps are designed to give certain benefits and weaknesses depending on the stage of the match. So the key thing with incursion, I will say, if you do end up stuck in one, it's good to really pay attention in the briefing before the match starts, because that will give a little bit of extra help to know the full course of the match, what all of your objectives are. It'll get explained by the AI narrator guy or whatever. If you just hit F next to that middle area, and definitely do those starting incursion test modes and the sandbox space mode after you do the space tutorial in the main area, because those are really helpful in terms of seeing what all the ships do, and then also seeing the match flow in incursion, because they kind of lay it all out for you. They give you a really detailed kind of overview, and then you can kind of follow the AI, let the AI commander kind of show what you should be tracking for objectives at each point. So yeah, I think that's all I kind of wanted to cover here for now. Obviously, there's a lot more in terms of the fighter-to-fighter combat, and some of the strategies you can use with how you want to coordinate your battleships, and how to kind of make the most of that, and how to maybe even kind of learn the maps where you can kind of sneak up and drop ships on a battleship if you're doing it properly. And obviously there's a lot more with Commander. So I would say, you know, trying to not vote Commander unless you're playing in an AI match is pretty good early on. Just to make sure you don't have to constantly be updating everyone's objectives and keeping track of that. Because players can get very lost if they don't have objectives on their map. Besides that, and the timer in the top actually is a relative timer based on what's happening in the match currently. So the game end is strictly tied to score. There's no time impact in terms of when the match ends. So you'll notice the timer, probably you'll notice through the match, has changed as it's gone because it is estimating the time left in the game if no objectives change ownership between the teams. So it is giving you kind of that full estimate as we're about to win here. Unless, say, we lose a frigate, because these ships, as I think I hadn't actually mentioned yet, count toward your overall score. So if you lose a ship, you'll lose about sometimes anywhere between 5 and 10%, depending on the size of the ship you're losing, if it's one of these bigger frigate type stuff. So there we go. Hope you learned a little here in terms of getting your bearings on the ship fighting. I know it was kind of a live commentary, but I myself am not a huge expert on it. Hopefully we get some more content maybe out of this. I think it's probably been harder for people to come up with stuff like this just because they're not maybe coming from my perspective, where I can see from recently myself having to learn these systems what the different things are versus someone who's been playing this game a long time and you know, can't really even think of what a walkthrough would be at this point just because they're so used to it. So definitely hope this helps. Feel free to post questions in the comments, and definitely highly recommend checking out the Discord. It's a really good resource to ask a lot of the smaller specific stuff when you're getting your bearings, and also looking up the questions that have already been answered there. And they put that Discord right in the menu for easy access. Yeah, thanks for listening. Hope to see you out there, and hope we get some good space battles going.